This is Casey Morgan reading an excerpt from Maria Semple's novel Where'd You Go Burned At for Dr. Tanner's senior seminar class in the fall semester of 2017.
What you've heard about the rain, it's all true. So you'd think it would become part of the fabric, especially among the lifers, but every time it rains and you have to interact with someone, here's what they'll say. Can you believe the weather? And you want to say, actually, I can believe the weather. What I can't believe is that I'm actually having a conversation about the weather. But I don't say that. You see, because that would be instigating a fight, something I try my best to avoid, with mixed results. Getting into fights with people makes my heart race. Not getting into fights with people makes my heart race. Even sleeping makes my heart race. I'm lying in bed when the thumping arrives, like a foreign invader. It's a horrible dark mask, like the monolith in 2001, self-organized but completely unknowable, and it enters my body and releases adrenaline. Like a black hole, it sucks in any benign thoughts that might be scrolling across my brain and attaches visceral panic to them. For instance, during the day I might have mused, hey, I should pack more fresh fruit in Bee's lunch. That night, with the arrival of the thumper, it becomes, I've got to pack more fresh fruit in Bee's lunch. I can feel the irrationality and anxiety draining my store of energy like a battery-operated race car grinding away in the corner. This is energy I will need to get through the next day. But I just lie in bed and watch it burn, and with it any hope for a productive tomorrow. There go the dishes, there goes the grocery store, there goes exercise, there goes bringing in the garbage cans, there goes basic human kindness. I wake up in a sweat so thorough I sleep with a pitcher of water by the bed, or I might die of dehydration.
What made you choose this excerpt?
So in this excerpt, Bernadette is talking about the anxiety and the depression that she feels since moving to this new town, which I thought was a really good representation of this anxiety, something that's not easy to describe, and most authors may explain it kind of poorly, but as a psychology major, it really stuck out to me because I appreciated the honesty and the accurate representation, and especially as someone who my younger sister has anxiety, so I know the way she kind of demonstrates it, and I thought it was a perfect representation of what she goes through.
Where'd You Go Burned At is a pretty funny book, and it was written by someone who had worked on multiple comedic projects. And why do you think this part about anxiety that seems a little bit more serious works so well in this novel?
I think, even though this is a funny book, what makes it so funny is kind of the absurdity factors in it, and the fact that this section in particular starts off with her talking about the weather and the rain in Seattle, something that everybody kind of does associate with Seattle, and how something as simple as small talk about the weather is kind of what set her off into this anxious spiral, is kind of what adds to the humor, because it takes a serious topic but adds that common relatable aspect to it that kind of adds to the humor of anxiety.
And so why do you think for this particular section Maria Semple chose to present this in letter format?
It helps to present this in letter format because she's kind of word vomiting, and if nobody's there to kind of interrupt or try to calm her down, if somebody were there to do that, it would have taken away from this spiral that she's kind of going into. But instead she's able to kind of just let everything out and kind of rant, and then it kind of slows down to the end when she talks about waking up in a sweat, that she needs a pitcher of water by the end, or she might die from dehydration. It kind of lets her calm herself down on her own.
Right, so the fact we can see it from her perspective in that letter is what makes it really powerful.
Right, exactly.
And one of the things that we've discussed a lot this semester is let's try to imagine this presented in different kind of formats. And say if this were a movie, do you think it would be able to have that same kind of authenticity if we're presented in a different way than it would be if you're able to be right inside the character's head?
I know that this is being turned into a movie, and I know that the comedic aspect has a lot of potential for it to be a really good movie, but the letter format to me is so perfect for this style of writing that I am concerned that it's going to come out a little off based on the way it came out in the book. And it reminds me of Perks of Being a Wallflower, because Perks of Being a Wallflower is another book written in letter format, and I did love that movie, and I think they did a really good job. So I do know it can be done. I'm just interested to see how, especially a scene like this that's so much of a monologue of just her ranting, how that's going to be portrayed.
We kind of talked about a little bit as well that there's a lot of projects in epistolary format where either the author decides to put it in letters or maybe a series of emails, and we see a lot of different forms employed by Semple in this novel. Why do you think she's able to pull those off so well? What about the format changing isn't distracting to a reader?
I think the timing she uses for specific formats. So when she decides to use emails versus when she decides to use this long letter format versus when it's like a note, something like that, that all like kind of plays into the part of it working really well, because there are certain expectations you have for each type of style. So you'd expect this type of ranting letter if somebody's just kind of having a breakdown and they need to like just let everything out. You wouldn't expect that in an email. So if this was an email, you'd kind of be suspicious the entire time you're reading it as to like, why is this happening? Like, why you wouldn't write an email like this. But this feels more natural, which would make sense for like the choice in the novel.
We've read a wide range of texts this semester in senior seminar, and obviously you had about 9 to choose from. Why did you choose specifically Where'd You Go, Bernadette, and why would you say it's effective in what it promises to the reader as a work?
I choose this book because I thought this was the most relevant book to my interests and my style of writing. I really love form writing, and I've experimented with it a lot in the past, and in one class in particular, my professor said, like, if you ever are doing form, there needs to be a reason. And I think this book executes why this type of form is intentional and doing like the right job, which I kind of mentioned in my last answer, that the fact that it's in these emails and in these letters, it gives you such a different perspective, and you see everybody's perspective without it just being a simple like third person point of view. So it taught me a lot on how like you can use form the right way.
And speaking finally of different places in the book and our class's reaction to them, a lot was made about the ending of this book and kind of like whether or not it fulfilled, whether it left readers with a question, whether we as writers would kind of buy into the fact that suddenly everything just kind of resolves in a kind of happy way. What did you make of the ending, and do you think that's an effective way for a writer to really close a story out?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue I had with the ending was just the length. I think I appreciated the like feeling of the ending of the happy ending. I thought that was appropriate, and I did like that we were getting that letter that was like missing, but I think it went on for way too long, to the point that like you wanted to skim, but you couldn't because it was the ending, so you didn't want to like miss out on those little details. But like if you're getting that feeling at the end, then it's clearly not doing the job it's supposed to be doing. But in terms of like the actual choice to include that letter at the end, I think that was a good choice.